She only inherited an old farm, but left a $1 million farm for her daughters. Sarah Miller never imagined that the lawyer's letter would completely change her life. A widow for 2 years and struggling to raise her 2 young daughters alone, she worked as a secretary in a small accounting office in a small rural town. The tight budget barely allowed her to put food on the table, and every month was a battle to pay the rent for the small apartment where they lived. When Dr. James read the will of her Uncle Arthur, a man she barely knew, Sarah felt her world collapse. She expected maybe some old furniture or a small sum of money that would help with the girls' expenses. Instead, she inherited a rural property abandoned for over 10 years, located 50 kilometers from town, in a region she didn't even know existed. "Mrs. Sarah, the property is about 50 acres, explained the lawyer, adjusting his glasses as he flipped through the yellow documents. "According to the records, your uncle stopped taking care of the farm when he fell ill. As far as I know, no one has been living there for quite some time." Sarah looked at her daughters, 10-year-old Elizabeth and 8-year-old Abigail, who were playing quietly in a corner of the room. They didn't fully understand what was happening, but they sensed the tension on their mother's face. "And how much is it worth?" she asked, wondering if it would be possible to sell the property to pay off some debts. The lawyer sighed softly. "Well, that's complicated. There are some pending issues, outstanding debts, overdue taxes. You would need to go there to assess the current condition of the property." That same day, Sarah took a bus with her daughters to see what she had inherited. During the 2-hour trip, she looked out the dusty window and tried to imagine what she would find. Elizabeth, always curious, asked questions about the uncle they had never met, while Abigail slept leaning on her mother's shoulder. When they got off in the small town nearest to the farm, Sarah asked a local taxi driver about Mr. Arthur's property. "Ah, the Miller farm," said the man, an older gentleman with greying hair and calloused hands. "It's been years since anyone's touched it. Old Arthur was a good man, but after his wife passed, he kind of lost heart in everything. He left the land abandoned and came to live here in town until—" The taxi driver didn't finish the sentence, but Sarah understood. Her uncle had spent his last years alone and melancholy, with no desire to care for what was once important to him. The dirt road leading to the farm was full of potholes and overgrown weeds on the sides. After 15 minutes of jolting, they reached the rusty gate that was barely standing. A faded sign still faintly showed the name Willow Creek Farm. "Mum, is this where we're going to live?" asked Elizabeth, with a mix of curiosity and worry in her voice. "I don't know yet, sweetie. Let's see how everything is first." What Sarah found was much worse than she imagined. The main house, which must have once been beautiful, had a partially collapsed roof. Broken tiles were scattered on the ground, and the walls showed stains of moisture and mold. The windowless openings left the structure completely exposed to the weather. Elizabeth held Abigail's hand when they saw the state of the kitchen. The wood-burning stove was covered in rust, and the cement floor had huge cracks. There was no running water working, and electrical wires dangled dangerously from the walls. "Mommy, are we really going to live here?" asked Abigail, her eyes full of tears. Sarah took a deep breath, trying to hold back her own tears. This wasn't an inheritance, it was a burden. How could she turn this ruin into something livable for her daughters? They walked through the property grounds, and Sarah noticed the soil seemed good, even though it was neglected. There were a few fruit trees still alive, though in need of care. A small stream ran at the back of the property, offering clean, abundant water. "At least there's water," she murmured to herself, trying to find some positive aspect in the situation. Back in town, Sarah sought information at City Hall about taxes and the property's documentation. That's when she discovered the debts were much larger than she had imagined. Uncle Arthur owed 3 years of property taxes, plus outstanding bills with local suppliers of building materials and animal feed. "It's almost $80,000 in debt," explained the City Hall clerk, a kind lady with thick glasses. "If it's not settled within 6 months, the city can seize the property for public auction." $80,000. For Sarah, who earned a modest income, it was an astronomical sum. She didn't even have $800 in her bank account. That night, in the small hotel where they were staying, Sarah couldn't sleep. Elizabeth and Abigail were sleeping soundly in the bed next to hers, tired from the long journey. She stayed on the porch looking at the stars and wondering if it wouldn't be better to simply abandon everything and go back home. But as she looked at her daughters, something stirred in Sarah's chest. They deserved something better than the tight life they led in the big city. That property, even in ruins, represented an opportunity for change, to build something of their own for the family. The next morning, Sarah went to a local real estate agency to assess the possibility of selling the farm. The agent, a middle-aged man named Marcus, got straight to the point. "Look, Mrs. Sarah, with all these debts and the state the property is in, the most we could get would be about $20,000. And that's if someone interested shows up, which is difficult." $20,000 wasn't even a quarter of what she needed to settle the debts. Even by selling, she would still owe $60,000, a situation even worse than the current one. It was then that Sarah made the most difficult decision of her life. Instead of trying to sell, she decided she would try to turn that property into something viable. She didn't know how, but she knew she couldn't give up without at least trying. Back in the city where she lived, Sarah informed her boss she was leaving her job. He tried to dissuade her, saying she was making a mistake, but she had already decided. She sold the few pieces of furniture they had, cancelled the apartment lease, and used the money to buy basic building materials. "Are you sure about this?" asked Elizabeth, always concerned with the family's practical decisions. "I'm not sure about anything, sweetheart," Sarah answered honestly. "But I know we can't go on as we were. At least there we'll have our own land." The move was made in a beat-up van borrowed from a friend. Their possessions all fit in the vehicle. Some clothes, basic pots and pans, mattresses and tools Sarah had bought at a used materials store. They arrived at the farm on a Friday afternoon, under a scorching March sun. The girls looked around with a mixture of adventure and apprehension. The house was still in the same deplorable state, but now it was officially their home. The first night was hard. They slept on mattresses on the living room floor, which was the only room with a partially intact roof. Abigail cried softly in the dark, missing her warm bed from the apartment, while Elizabeth tried to comfort her. "Mom, do you think we did the right thing coming here?" whispered Elizabeth. "I hope so, my dear, I hope so." The next morning, Sarah got to work. She cleared the rubble from the house, separating what could be salvaged. She discovered that some wooden beams were still in good condition, and that the electrical system, though old, could be restored with some repairs. The girls helped as best they could. Elizabeth, with her organized way, sorted usable nails and screws, while Abigail gathered small stones to fill holes in the wall. It was slow, challenging work, especially for a woman who had never worked in construction. The first major victory came when Sarah managed to reconnect the well's water pump. After hours trying to understand the hydraulic system rigged up by Uncle Arthur, she finally heard the sound of water rising through the pipes. When the first faucet worked, the three of them hugged emotionally. "Now we can take a real shower," celebrated Abigail, who for 3 days had been washing with buckets of water from the creek. But the small victories were interrupted by bigger problems. 2 weeks after the move, a bank representative showed up at the property with foreclosure documents. Sarah discovered that her uncle had used the farm as collateral for loans he was never able to pay. "You have 3 months to settle the situation," explained the young man, a youth in a suit who seemed uncomfortable with the situation. "It's $120,000 in principal plus interest and monetary correction. $120,000. The amount had increased considerably from the last information she had. Sarah felt her legs go weak, but she couldn't show weakness in front of her daughters. After the young man left, she sat on the porch floor and finally cried. All the determination of the last days seemed to have drained away. How could she get that much money in 3 months? Elizabeth, sensing her mother's despair, sat down beside her. "Mom, we can do it. You always said that when the family pulls together, everything gets easier." Those words, coming from a 10-year-old girl, gave Sarah back the strength she needed. They couldn't give up now. In the following days, Sarah desperately looked for alternatives. She visited banks, credit unions, tried to get loans, but her current financial situation didn't offer sufficient guarantees for such high amounts. It was then that she received an unexpected visit. Thomas Mitchell, owner of the neighboring farm and one of the most influential people in the area, showed up one Monday morning driving a new pickup truck. "Mrs. Sarah, I heard you're having some difficulties here," he said, taking off his hat and showing a friendliness that seemed forced. Thomas was a man in his 50s, well-dressed and with the air of someone used to getting what he wanted. His property was one of the largest in the region, with beef cattle and soybean crops stretching over hundreds of acres. "Difficulties are part of it, Mr. Thomas. We're managing," replied Sarah, trying to sound confident. "Look, I'll be direct with you. I know about the debts weighing on this property. I have a proposal that could solve your problems." Thomas offered to buy the farm for $40,000, almost double the appraisal she had received before. It was an amount that would cover part of the debts, but would still leave the family in a very difficult situation. "It's a good offer, Mrs. Sarah. In this region, abandoned land isn't worth much. And with the debts you have—" "I'll think about your proposal," replied Sarah without showing much enthusiasm. "Don't take too long. Opportunities like this don't come along often," said Thomas, putting his hat back on and heading to his truck. After he left, Elizabeth asked, "Mom, what are you going to do?" "I don't know yet, honey. I need to think." But Sarah knew that accepting Thomas's offer would mean giving up everything they were fighting for. There was something about the way he spoke that bothered her. It seemed he was more interested in the land than in helping her. That afternoon, while working on repairing a window, Sarah noticed one of the nearest neighbors was watching her work. He was an elderly gentleman with white hair who lived in a small house across the road. He approached and introduced himself as George Bennett, retired and a resident of the area for over 30 years. "Pardon my curiosity, Mrs. Sarah. It's just that it's been a long time since anyone's done anything with this property. Your uncle was a good man. George said he had worked many years in the agricultural sector and offered some tips on restoring the property. He explained that the land at the farm was especially good for raising small animals. Your uncle even had some chickens here. They laid the best eggs in the region. But after Mrs. Martha passed, he lost heart for everything." Chickens. The idea kept hammering in Sarah's head all night. Raising chickens didn't require much initial investment and could generate income quickly. She had grown up in her grandmother's house, which always had a chicken coop in the backyard. The next morning, Sarah went into town to research poultry farming. At the public library, she got some books on raising birds and began to study. She discovered there was a growing market for free-range eggs in the area, especially organic eggs. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. With the little money left from her savings, Sarah bought 20 chicks at a farm in the neighboring town. She built an improvised chicken coop using old boards found on the property and wire mesh she bought at a hardware store. Elizabeth and Abigail were delighted with the yellow, fluffy chicks. They took on the responsibility of caring for the little creatures, giving each one a name and observing their daily growth. "Mom, look how fast they're growing," Abigail would say, delicately holding one of the chicks. "And they like us," Elizabeth added. "When we come near, they come running." But raising poultry proved more challenging than Sarah had imagined. In the first week, 3 chicks died for no apparent reason. She suspected it might be some disease or a problem with their feed. Desperate, she sought out George for advice. The neighbor came over to the property and examined the chicken coop. "The problem might be the humidity," he explained. "Chicks are very sensitive. You need to improve ventilation and keep the place dry." Following George's instructions, Sarah made modifications to the coop. She opened more windows for ventilation and raised the floor to avoid dampness. The remaining chicks began to develop better. Meanwhile, the financial pressure increased. Basic bills like food and gas began to tighten. Sarah tried some temporary jobs in town, but the distance made the situation very difficult, especially with the girls to care for. One morning, Elizabeth woke up early and found her mother crying softly in the kitchen, looking at the bills spread out on the table. "Mom, what's wrong?" "Nothing, honey. I'm just a little worried about some things." "Is it about money?" Sarah sighed. Elizabeth had always been very perceptive for her age. "Yes, my dear. It's being harder than I imagined." "We can help more," Elizabeth said with determination. Abigail and I can take better care of the chickens, and I can try to make some things to sell in town." Her daughter's maturity moved Sarah. Elizabeth was growing up too fast, taking on responsibilities that shouldn't belong to a child. "You already help so much, sweetheart. Don't worry about these things." But Elizabeth was already thinking. She had noticed the chickens had started laying their first eggs, still few in number, but of excellent quality. The eggs were large, with deep yellow yolks and sturdy shells. "Mum, we could try selling the eggs in town," she suggested. The idea was good, but Sarah knew it would be hard to find buyers. Factory farm eggs were much cheaper in the supermarkets, and she couldn't compete on price. It was then that George suggested something different. "Mrs. Sarah, have you ever thought about organic eggs? The demand for them has been growing a lot around here. People are willing to pay more for a quality product. Organic eggs." Sarah had read about that in her studies but hadn't seriously considered it. Organic production required special care, but it could generate a much higher income. "How would I do that?" she asked. "First, the chickens' feed has to be completely natural. No industrial feed with chemicals. Second, they need space to roam freely. And third, you can't use unnecessary medications." The property had plenty of space for the chickens to roam freely, and Sarah could produce a good part of the natural feed right there by planting corn and other grains. She decided to invest in the idea. With the last resources she had, she bought corn, sunflower, and other plant seeds that could serve as natural feed for the birds. Elizabeth and Abigail helped prepare the soil and plant. "How long does it take to grow?" asked Abigail, looking at the tiny seeds in the soil. "About 2 or 3 months," explained Sarah. "But in the meantime, we'll buy natural feed from other producers." The problem was that natural feed cost almost 3 times more than regular feed, and Sarah was already in the red. She urgently needed some source of income. It was then that she decided to try selling the eggs she already had, even without the organic certification yet. At the town's farmers' market, she set up a small stall with 3 dozen eggs. "Farm fresh, free-range eggs," she announced, trying to attract customers. The first few hours were discouraging. People passed by, looked at the prices, and moved on to the stalls with cheaper eggs. Sarah began to think she had made a mistake, but then a middle-aged woman stopped at the stall. "Are these eggs truly free-range?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. My chickens roam freely on the farm. They eat grass and natural corn." The woman bought 2 dozen and said she would return the following week if she liked the quality. Other people also became interested after overhearing the conversation, and by the end of the day, Sarah had sold all the eggs. The money wasn't much, but it was enough to give hope. For the first time in weeks, she bought something tasty for the girls to eat. "Mum, you did it," celebrated Elizabeth when Sarah told them about the market. "It was just the beginning, sweetie. We still have a long way to go." The following week, Sarah took 5 dozen to the market. The woman who had bought the previous week did return and brought 2 friends. They praised the quality of the eggs a lot and bought more. "Do you plan to increase production?" asked one of the customers. "I run a guest house and we would be interested in buying free-range eggs regularly." A regular customer. It was exactly what Sarah needed. They talked about quantities and prices and made a deal for a weekly supply of 10 dozen. But to meet the demand, Sarah would need more chickens, and more chickens meant more expenses for feed, more work, and more risks. With the small income from the eggs, she managed to buy 20 more chicks. The chicken coop needed to be expanded, and the whole family worked on building the new structure. Elizabeth proved to be very skilled with tools. She could nail boards and assemble structures with a precision that even impressed George. "This girl has a knack for construction," commented the neighbor, watching Elizabeth work. "It's just that she always liked building things," explained Sarah with pride. Abigail, in turn, developed a special connection with the birds. She could tell when a hen was sick or if there was a problem in the coop just by observing the animal's behavior. "Mum, the brown hen is acting strange," she would say. "I think she's not feeling well." And she was usually right. Abigail had a natural instinct for handling animals that surprised even George, who had decades of rural experience. With more hens, egg production increased significantly. Soon, Sarah was selling 15 dozen per week at the farmer's market and 10 dozen to the guest house. The income was still small, but it covered the family's basic expenses. The problem was that Thomas Mitchell did not like seeing his neighbor's progress at all. He had expected her to accept his purchase offer, and now he saw that she might actually have some success on the property. One morning, Sarah found the property gate open and some hens loose on the road. Fortunately, she managed to gather them all before anything worse happened, but the incident left her worried. "It could have been our carelessness," said Elizabeth. "Maybe we didn't close it properly last night." But Sarah suspected it wasn't carelessness. She started locking the gate with a padlock and asked the girls to always be alert for any strange movements. The following week, something worse happened. Someone threw poison into the chickens' waterer during the night. Sarah discovered it in the morning when she found 3 birds prostrate and others showing signs of poisoning. Desperate, she called the nearest veterinarian, but he was handling an emergency at another farm. It was George who helped, bringing activated charcoal to neutralize some of the poison. "This was no accident," he said, examining the waterer. "Someone did this on purpose." Sarah knew who might have done it, but she had no way to prove it. She simply replaced all the waterers and doubled her vigilance. Elizabeth was very upset by what had happened. "Why would someone do this to our little animals?" she asked, with tears in her eyes. "There are people who don't like to see others prosper, dear," explained Sarah, "but we can't let that stop us." The hens that survived the poisoning recovered little by little. Sarah realized she needed to be more careful and strategic to protect her small business. It was then that she learned about a municipal program to support family farming. At City Hall, a clerk explained that there were resources available for small rural producers who wanted to develop sustainable activities. The loan amount can be up to $50,000 with subsidized interest and a 5-year repayment term, explained the clerk. $50,000. It was less than half of what Sarah owed, but it would be a significant relief and allow for important investments in the property. The problem was the bureaucracy. The process required a detailed project, extensive documentation, and proof of technical and economic feasibility. Sarah had neither the knowledge nor the resources to hire someone to prepare all of that. It was Elizabeth who suggested a solution. "Mum, at school we learned how to make projects on the computer. I can try to help you." The girl really knew her way around a computer well. At the public library, they spent several afternoons researching information about poultry farming, calculating costs and planning improvements for the property. Elizabeth prepared detailed spreadsheets with all the projected expenses and revenues. Abigail contributed technical drawings of the expanded chicken coop and the breeding areas. Sarah was impressed with her daughter's capability and dedication. The project was filed at City Hall on a Friday late morning. Now it was a matter of waiting for the evaluation, which could take several months. Meanwhile, the small production continued to grow. Sarah managed to increase the flock to 60 chickens, and production reached 300 eggs per week. The income allowed for some basic improvements to the house, such as fixing the roof and installing hot water in the bathroom. The girls were adapting well to rural life. Elizabeth enrolled in the town school and went every day on the school bus. Abigail, who was still 8 years old, studied in the morning and spent her afternoons helping with the chickens. "Mum, I like it here more than in the big city," confessed Abigail one afternoon while collecting eggs. "Here we have space and the little animals." "And you, Elizabeth?" asked Sarah. "I like it too. It's different, but it's good. And we're building something of our own," replied the older girl, showing a maturity that touched her mother's heart. Life was finding a more stable rhythm when Sarah received an unexpected visit. It was Dr. James, the lawyer who had handled Uncle Arthur's will. "Mrs. Sarah, I heard you are running the property," he said, seeming genuinely pleased. "I came here to talk about some estate matters that might interest you." He explained that, during the final organization of her uncle's documents, he had found some old papers stored in a desk drawer. Among them was a document Sarah needed to know about. "Your uncle registered the water usage rights for the stream that runs through the property. It's a document from 1985, when it was still easier to get these concessions." Water usage rights. Sarah didn't fully understand what that meant, but the lawyer explained it was something very valuable. With the water scarcity we're experiencing in the region, These rights are increasingly important. You have the legal guarantee to use all the water from the stream for irrigation and other productive purposes. This opened completely new possibilities. Sarah could expand production far beyond poultry. She could plant vegetables, fruit, even develop fish farming if she wanted. "There are companies that would pay well just for the water usage rights," commented the lawyer. "But I believe for you it would be more advantageous to use these rights to develop your own property." That night, Sarah could barely sleep thinking about the possibilities. Elizabeth also got excited when she heard the news. "Mom, we could plant vegetables to sell at the farmer's market along with the eggs," she suggested. "And fruit too," added Abigail. "I saw some peach trees out back that just need water to produce again." The family began making plans. With the water guarantee, they could diversify production and significantly increase their income. But everything depended on the project's approval at City Hall, which would bring the necessary resources for the investments. 2 weeks later, Sarah received the call that would change everything. The project had been approved, and she would have access to a $50,000 loan with special conditions. "Mom, we did it!" shouted Elizabeth when she heard the news. "Now the real work is about to begin," replied Sarah, but she couldn't hide her joy either. With the approved resources, Sarah drew up an investment plan. Part of the money would be used to pay off the most urgent debts, ensuring they wouldn't lose the property. The remainder would be invested in productive improvements. She built a larger, more modern chicken coop with a proper ventilation system and automatic feeders. She bought another 100 hens from a specialized laying breed and began preparing ground for an organic vegetable garden. Elizabeth took on the responsibility of controlling all the financial aspects of the business. She created detailed spreadsheets on the computer, tracking expenses, income, production, and even the sales schedule. At 11 years old, the girl showed a natural talent for management. Abigail, in turn, became the expert in animal care. She could identify health problems in the birds long before any symptoms appeared, simply by observing subtle behaviors. "This hen here will lay a double yolk tomorrow," she would say, pointing to one of the birds, and she was usually right. Abigail developed an incredible intuition for predicting production and identifying the best breeding hens. With increased production, Sarah needed to find new markets. She began supplying eggs to 3 guest houses in the region and 2 bakeries that sold artisanal products. The quality of her organic eggs soon drew attention. The yolks were yellower and more consistent than conventional eggs, and the shells were more resilient. Customers began placing specific orders and even recommending them to acquaintances. "Mrs. Sarah, your eggs are the best I've ever bought," said Mrs. Catherine, owner of one of the guest houses. "My guests always praise the breakfast when I use your eggs." The recognition of quality allowed Sarah to charge a premium price for her products. The organic eggs sold for almost double the price of regular eggs, but demand kept growing. 6 months after the project's approval, the small farm was already producing over 1,000 eggs per week. The monthly income had tripled compared to the early days, and Sarah managed to make significant improvements to the house. They installed flooring in the main areas, painted all the walls, completely repaired the roof, and renovated the kitchen. The house that once seemed uninhabitable was now comfortable and welcoming. But success also brought new challenges. Thomas Mitchell intensified his attempts to sabotage Sarah's business. He spread rumors in town about the quality of the eggs and tried to convince suppliers not to sell feed to her. "That woman knows nothing about raising poultry," he would say in the town's bars. "Sooner or later there will be a problem and she'll contaminate the whole area." Sarah knew about the rumors, but decided not to confront Thomas directly. Instead, she focused on maintaining the excellent quality of her products and building a solid reputation based on results. The strategy worked. New customers kept coming, attracted by the quality and positive reviews from those who already bought. Sarah even received an offer from an organic market chain from the big city to supply eggs on a larger scale. "That's 500 dozen per week," explained the chain's representative during a visit to the property. "We pay a good price, but we require consistent quality and punctual deliveries." 500 dozen per week meant 6,000 eggs. Sarah would have to quadruple her current production. It was an incredible opportunity, but also a huge risk. "Can I give you an answer by Friday?" she asked. Of course, but don't take too long. We have other interested suppliers. That night, the family gathered to discuss the proposal. It was the most important decision they would make since arriving at the property. It's a once-in-a-lifetime chance, Mom, said Elizabeth, analyzing the numbers. If it works, in 2 years we can pay off all our debts and still have money left for other investments. But if it fails, we could lose everything, Sarah pondered. Mom, we've already lost everything once and managed to start over, Abigail reminded her. And now we know much more about raising chickens. The wisdom of her youngest daughter touched Sarah deeply. Abigail was right. They had already overcome much greater challenges with far fewer resources and knowledge. On Friday, Sarah called the network representative and accepted the proposal. Now she had 6 months to triple production and guarantee the required quality. The following months were the most intense of the family's life. Sarah built 2 new sheds, bought 300 chickens, and hired her first employee, a local young man named Michael. Elizabeth effectively took over the business administration. She controlled inventory, calculated costs, negotiated with suppliers, and even supervised deliveries. At 12 years old, the girl was practically running a company. Abigail became the production quality supervisor. She inspected the eggs, monitored the birds' health, and developed her own grading system that ensured only the best products reached the customers. This tray has an egg with a slightly strange shell, she would say, separating the products. Better to use it for our own consumption. The quality standard Abigail established was even stricter than the client's requirements. This guaranteed there were never any complaints about the products supplied. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. The first delivery to the organic market chain was a total success. The purchasing manager was impressed with the quality and presentation of the products. We rarely see organic eggs with this standard, he commented. You have a future in this market. The contract was renewed automatically, and soon other distributors began seeking out Sarah. In less than a year, she was supplying eggs to a restaurant chain and 2 organic product cooperatives. The property's income had increased tenfold compared to the early days. Sarah managed to pay off all of Uncle Arthur's debts and even invest in new productive projects. She built a greenhouse for organic vegetable production, taking advantage of the water usage rights from the creek. Elizabeth also suggested creating a website for direct-to-consumer sales. Mum, a lot of people want to buy organic products but don't know where to find them, explained Elizabeth. If we have a website, we can sell directly and earn more. The idea was excellent. With help from a cousin who understood computers, they created a simple but functional online store. Orders began arriving in the first week. Willow Creek Farm Organic Eggs, read Abigail, seeing the company name on the site. It looks nice. The online business grew quickly. Customers from the big city placed orders for eggs, vegetables, and even free-range chickens raised on the property. Sarah had to hire 2 more employees to handle the demand. Michael, who had started as a general helper, proved to be very dedicated and competent. Sarah promoted him to production supervisor, responsible for the daily handling of the birds and the maintenance of the facilities. Mrs. Sarah, do you want me to prepare another shed? He asked. We have enough orders to justify 200 more chickens. The expansion continued, but now in a planned and sustainable way. Sarah had learned to grow without compromising quality or taking unnecessary risks. Elizabeth turned 12 and was already talking about studying business administration at university. She had become a true expert in managing small rural businesses, developing control systems that impressed even experienced technicians. Abigail, at 9 years old, showed an increasing interest in veterinary medicine. She could diagnose and treat minor health problems in the birds better than many professionals. George always said she had a natural gift. The transformation of the property was impressive. What 2 years earlier had been a farm in ruins was now a prosperous and organized rural business. The modern sheds, the renovated house, the well-kept flower beds, and the new equipment showed the results of the family's hard work. But the greatest transformation had happened in the people themselves. Sarah had discovered a strength and entrepreneurial ability she never even knew she possessed. Her daughters had matured quickly, taking on responsibilities and developing skills that would take them far in life. "You know I'm very proud of you, right?" said Sarah one evening during dinner. "We're proud of you too, Mom," replied Elizabeth. "You never gave up, even when everything seemed impossible." "And now we have a real business," added Abigail, "just like the business people on TV." The recognition of their success came unexpectedly. Sarah received an invitation to participate in an agribusiness fair in the big city, representing the region's small organic producers. At the fair, she set up a simple but well-organized booth, showcasing her products and telling the story of the farm's transformation. The impact was much greater than she had anticipated. "How did you manage to build all this in such a short time?" asked a journalist interested in the story. "With a lot of hard work, planning, and the help of my daughters," replied Sarah, "and most importantly, by never giving up on our dreams." The article about the farm that rose from the ashes was published in a specialized agribusiness magazine and brought even more visibility to Sarah's work. New clients appeared, including some renowned restaurants from the big city that wanted high-quality organic products. Sarah needed to expand production again to meet the demand. This time, she decided to do things differently. Instead of just increasing chicken farming, she diversified by investing in other activities. She started raising fish in the creek, planted a larger vegetable garden, and even began a small honey production with a few beehives. Elizabeth suggested creating a guided tour program for the property, showing how organic production worked. The idea was to educate consumers and generate extra income from rural tourism. "A lot of people from the city want to see how food is produced," she explained. "We could charge a fee for the tours and also sell products on site." The rural tourism project was a huge success. Families from the big city came on weekends to learn about organic production, participate in egg collecting, and buy fresh products directly from the producer. Abigail proved to be an excellent guide, explaining with simplicity and enthusiasm how to care for the animals and produce food without chemicals. The visiting children were enchanted by her knowledge. "This girl knows more about raising animals than a lot of technicians out there," commented one of the visitors, impressed with Abigail's explanations. The rural tourism brought benefits beyond the extra income. Sarah established important contacts with consumers, distributors, and other producers. Her network of relationships grew significantly. It was through one of these contacts that she learned of an even greater opportunity. A group of investors was interested in financing the expansion of small organic producers with growth potential. "They offer investment in exchange for a minority share of the profits," explained the intermediary. "It would be a way to grow faster while keeping control of the business." The proposal was tempting, but Sarah had learned to be careful with important decisions. She asked for time to analyze all the details and discuss it with her family. "What do you think?" she asked her daughters. "It depends on the conditions," replied Elizabeth, always practical. "If they only want to share in the profits without interfering in decisions, it could be good. And if they can help us grow without losing our way of working," added Abigail. After several meetings and negotiations, Sarah closed a favorable deal. The investors would provide resources for significant expansion, but she would retain total control of operations and strategic decisions. With the new investment, Willow Creek Farm transformed into an impressive agro-industrial complex. Climate-controlled warehouses were built, a small processing plant, cold storage rooms, and even a company store. Production reached 10,000 eggs per week, in addition to free-range chickens, organic vegetables, fish, honey, and handmade preserves. The company employed 15 local workers and had customers in 3 states. Elizabeth, now 14, was already being courted by universities offering scholarships in business administration. Her work in the family business had caught the attention of educators specializing in gifted youth. Abigail, 12, continued to be the quality and animal care specialist. She had developed her own management techniques that resulted in products superior to conventional market standards. "My daughters are my most important partners," Sarah said proudly. "They built this with me from the beginning." The Miller family's success became a reference in the region. Other small producers sought out Sarah for advice on how to develop their properties. She always helped generously, sharing knowledge and experiences. "The more organic producers we have in the region, the better for everyone," she explained. "The market is big enough for many people." This supportive philosophy contrasted completely with the attitude of Thomas Mitchell, who kept trying to harm his neighbors to maintain his dominant position. But his unfair tactics no longer had any effect. Sarah's reputation was solid. Customers, suppliers, and business partners trusted her work completely. Thomas had to revise his strategies and even sought a rapprochement. "Mrs. Sarah, what about considering a partnership?" he suggested during an unexpected visit. "We could join our properties and create something even bigger." "Thank you for the proposal, Mr. Thomas," Sarah replied politely. "But we are satisfied with our current size." The refusal was kind, but firm. Sarah had learned that unchecked growth wasn't always the best strategy. She preferred to maintain quality and control rather than risk ventures that could compromise what she had built. This wisdom proved correct when an economic crisis hit the country and many large producers faced difficulties. Willow Creek Farm, having grown sustainably and having a solid base of loyal customers, weathered the difficult period without major problems. "Our company is small, but it's strong," said Elizabeth, analyzing the numbers during the crisis. "We don't have large debts, and our customers keep buying because they know the quality." Indeed, the demand for organic products even increased during the crisis, as people began to value the quality of the food they consumed more. Willow Creek Farm even had a waiting list for some products. 5 years after arriving at the property, Sarah looked around and could hardly believe the transformation. The abandoned farm had become a prosperous and recognized company. Her daughters had become competent and responsible young women. But the greatest wealth wasn't in the impressive financial numbers. It was in the trust they had earned, the respect of the community, the true friendships, and the pride of having built something valuable with their own hands. "Do you know what I discovered?" said Sarah to her daughters on a Sunday afternoon. "Uncle Arthur didn't just leave us an old farm. He left us an opportunity to discover who we really are." "And we discovered we are strong people," replied Elizabeth. "And that we know how to take good care of the animals and the land," added Abigail. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of visitors. It was a family from the big city who had scheduled a visit to see the organic production. Abigail ran out to greet them, excited about another chance to show her work. While the daughters led the visitors around, Sarah watched from a distance. There was a perfect harmony between the people, the animals, and the land. Everything worked in balance, producing not just food but also happiness and fulfillment. The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was a new customer interested in placing a large order of organic products for a hotel chain. Another opportunity for sustainable growth. "Willow Creek Farm, Sarah speaking," she answered, with the professionalism she had developed over the years. While she negotiated the details of the new contract, she watched Elizabeth organizing the company paperwork and Abigail explaining to the visitors how to identify superior quality eggs. Her daughters had become true partners in the family business. The call ended with another deal closed. Sarah noted the details in an appointment book that was always full of commitments and opportunities. The small, ruined farm had become a business with a packed schedule. "Mom, do you want me to prepare the quote for the new customer?" asked Elizabeth, who had overheard part of the conversation. "Yes, you can prepare it, dear. You know how to do it better than I do," it was true. Elizabeth had developed administrative skills that surpassed even those of experienced business owners. Her natural talent, combined with practical experience, had created an exceptional executive while still a teenager. Abigail finished the guided tour and came to join her mother and sister. She was beaming, as she always was, after showing her work to interested people. "They were impressed with our production," she reported, "and they bought 5 dozen eggs and a chicken to take home." Every direct sale was special to Abigail. She loved seeing people's reactions when they tasted her products for the first time. The superior flavor of the organic food always caused surprise and admiration. The day was ending, and it was time to collect the afternoon eggs and check that all the animals were well. It was a daily ritual the family did together, taking the chance to talk and plan for the next day. "Tomorrow the magazine people are coming to do a story on small family businesses," Elizabeth reminded them. "And on Wednesday, we have the meeting with the cooperative people, Sarah added. I can show the new chickens to the magazine people, suggested Abigail. They're beautiful and started laying this week. Life had found a prosperous and balanced rhythm. Each day brought new challenges and opportunities, but now they faced everything with confidence and accumulated experience. As they walked through the sheds checking on production, Sarah thought about how quickly life could change. A few years earlier, she was a desperate widow with no prospects. Now, she was a respected businesswoman with a promising future. Do you think Uncle Arthur imagined we could accomplish all this? She asked her daughters. I think he knew the land was good, replied Elizabeth. And he left it to us because he trusted we would do something good with it. He must be proud of us up in heaven, said Abigail with her characteristic simplicity. Mentioning Uncle Arthur always stirred gratitude in Sarah. If he hadn't left them the property, they would never have discovered their talents and potential. That seemingly unwanted inheritance had become the foundation of a completely new life. The afternoon eggs were collected and sorted by quality, as always. Abigail had developed such strict criteria that rarely did any defective product reach the customers. This excellence was one of the pillars of the company's success. Elizabeth organized the next day's orders and checked the packaging inventory. Her impeccable organization ensured they never ran out of materials to serve the clients. She had turned administration into an exact science. Mum, we need to order more egg cartons, she informed. With the new contract, we'll use up everything we have in 2 weeks. Go ahead and order, authorized Sarah. And while you're at it, order the new labels with the redesigned logo. The company was always evolving and modernizing. What had started as an improvised artisanal production now had all the professional standards of the market, but without ever losing the quality and personal care that set it apart. When they finished all the checks, they sat on the house's porch to watch the sunset. It was a moment of pause and reflection they had incorporated into their daily routine. There, they talked about the day, made plans, and simply enjoyed each other's company. Do you know what makes me happiest about all of this? Said Sarah, looking at the golden horizon. What, Mum? Asked the daughters in unison. It's that we built all of this together. Every brick, every chicken, every egg. Everything was our work, with our own hands. Elizabeth smiled and took her mother's hand. And it will be ours forever. No one can take from us what we built. Abigail joined the hug. And when I grow up, I'll keep taking care of the animals. Only I'll be a veterinarian too. And I'll study business administration to make the company grow even more, completed Elizabeth. The girls' dreams had expanded along with the property. Now they had clear goals and the confidence to achieve them. The experience of building a business from scratch had given them a solid foundation for any future challenge. Night fell with its characteristic country tranquility. The chickens were already put away, the equipment checked, the gates locked. Everything ran with the precision of a well-managed company. They dined at a table full of food, with products from their own farm. Eggs, greens, chicken. Even the honey were produced there. Food self-sufficiency was one of the achievements that made Sarah most proud. Remember when we only ate rice and beans because we didn't have money for anything else? Asked Elizabeth. How could I forget? Replied Sarah. But those hard times taught us to value what we have now. And to never waste food, completed Abigail, who always finished everything on her plate. The difficulties of the past had become valuable lessons. The family learned that luxury wasn't in expensive things, but in having enough with quality and peace of mind. This learning made them different from many wealthy people they knew. After dinner, Elizabeth went to study for her school exams. Even with all the responsibilities at the company, she maintained excellent grades and planned to attend a good university. Sarah insisted that she not abandon her studies. Abigail played a bit with the farm cats before going to sleep. She had adopted several abandoned animals that showed up on the property. They were all well cared for and helped control rodents that could harm the production. Sarah stayed on the porch, organizing the day's papers and planning the following week. The schedule was full. Meetings with clients, a supplier visit, an interview to hire another employee, participation in an event about sustainable agriculture. The phone rang. It was a last-minute client wanting to place an urgent order for the weekend. Sarah noted all the details, and assured she could handle it. Good service was another trademark of the company. "Willow Creek Farm always finds a way," she said, repeating the slogan they had created. And it was true. The flexibility and willingness to solve customers' problems had earned them impressive loyalty. Many large companies couldn't offer the personalized service they provided. When she finally went to bed, Sarah looked out the bedroom window and saw the lights of the sheds that stayed on during the night to keep the chickens calm. It was a constant reminder of how her life had changed. A few years earlier, she looked out the window of her rented apartment and saw only grey buildings and noisy cars. Now she saw her own land, her own businesses, her own future built with honest work. Sleep came peacefully, as it always did when the day had been productive and well-lived. Sarah fell asleep thinking about plans to expand honey production and the new technologies that could improve the company's efficiency. The next morning she woke to the roosters crowing and the movement of her daughters already preparing for another workday. The routine had become enjoyable because every activity had a clear purpose and visible results. Breakfast was always special, with fresh eggs, homemade bread made by a neighbor, honey from their own production, and fruits from the orchard. It was a meal that would cost a lot at any gourmet restaurant, but here it was just the family's everyday fare. "The magazine people arrive at 10 o'clock, Elizabeth reminded, checking the schedule. "And I already set aside the prettiest chickens to show," said Abigail, always proud of her animals. "I'll ask Michael to clean the sheds well," added Sarah. The feature story on small family businesses would be an important promotional opportunity. Sarah had learned that marketing and communication were as important as product quality for a company's success. As they prepared to receive the journalists, a delivery of special organic feed they had ordered arrived. It was a high investment, but it would result in even better eggs, more valued by the market. "This feed costs 3 times more than the regular one," observed Elizabeth, checking the invoice. "But our eggs are worth 5 times more too," Sarah reminded. "It's worth investing in quality." That simple math had been fundamental to their success. Instead of competing on price, they competed on quality. This allowed for higher margins and more satisfied, loyal customers. The journalists arrived promptly at 10 o'clock. It was a small team: a reporter, a photographer, and a producer. They were impressed with the organization and modernity of the facilities. "When we heard it was a family business, we expected to find something more artisanal," confessed the reporter. "We did start out artisanal," Sarah explained, "but we learned that organization and technology help maintain quality on a larger scale." The interview lasted almost 2 hours. Sarah told the whole story, from the unexpected inheritance to the current success. The journalists were fascinated by the journey of overcoming and growth. Elizabeth demonstrated the administrative control systems she had developed. The journalists were surprised by the sophistication of the methods used by a teenager to manage a growing business. Abigail made sure to show her handling and selection techniques. She explained in detail how to identify healthy chickens, predict egg production, and keep quality standards always high. "We've never seen a young person with so much technical knowledge," commented the producer. "She speaks like a specialist with decades of experience." Photos were taken in various areas of the property: the modern barns, the renovated house, the organized garden beds, the family working together. Each image told part of the transformation story. "This piece is going to make the cover," said the photographer to the reporter. "The story is incredible, and the photos turned out great." After the journalists left, the family returned to their normal activities. But there was a special satisfaction in the air. They knew the article would bring more recognition and possibly new clients interested in quality products. "Mum, do you think the article will turn out well?" asked Abigail. "I'm sure it will," replied Sarah. "They were very interested in our story." In the afternoon, new visitors arrived. This time it was a family with 3 small children who wanted to see how an organic farm worked. The children were delighted with the chickens and the other animals. "Can I pick up a little egg?" asked a 5-year-old boy. "Yes, you can," answered Abigail, helping him collect the egg carefully. "But you have to be gentle so it doesn't break." Interacting with children always moved Abigail. She enjoyed teaching the little ones about caring for animals and the importance of healthy food. She had discovered a calling for environmental education. The parents were impressed with Abigail's knowledge and the organization of the property. They bought products to take home and already scheduled another visit for the following month, this time bringing other interested family members. "You are providing an important educational service," commented the father. "My children had never seen how eggs are produced." This recognition of the educational value of their work gave Sarah a new perspective. Perhaps they could develop the educational aspect of the visits even further, creating specific programs for schools and groups of children. At the end of the day, during the routine production check, Elizabeth suggested exactly that. "Mom, we could create special visits for schools. It would be a way to educate children about healthy eating and also generate some extra income." "That's a great idea," agreed Sarah. "We can develop a structured program with educational activities." "And I can be the teacher," Abigail got excited. "I love explaining about the little animals to the children." Another opportunity for diversification and growth. Willow Creek Farm was transforming into a multifunctional center that combined production, education, and rural tourism. It was a natural and sustainable evolution. That night, Sarah stayed up late planning the educational program. She researched online about other similar initiatives and began structuring a project that could be presented to the regional education departments. The idea of contributing to children's education about healthy eating and sustainability excited her greatly. It was a way to give back to the community, part of the success they had achieved. The educational program would be another unique feature of the business. Beyond being producers of quality organic food, they would also become environmental educators. It was a natural extension of the values they practiced daily. Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to leave a like and especially to subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we are just starting out. Now continuing, the following week the magazine article was published prominently. The cover story showed a photo of the family working together on the farm with the title, "The Miracle of Willow Creek Farm, How an Unwanted Inheritance Became an Organic Empire." The impact was immediate. The phone wouldn't stop ringing with requests from new clients, invitations for talks, partnership proposals, and even investment offers. The national visibility had multiplied the opportunities. "Mum, there's a television crew wanting to do a story too," informed Elizabeth, answering another call. "And there are 3 universities inviting you to give lectures on rural entrepreneurship," added Abigail, checking the emails. The success was happening at a speed that even frightened Sarah. She needed to be careful not to get lost amid so many opportunities and to keep the focus on what really mattered, the quality of the products and the family's well-being. "We'll only accept what adds real value to our work," she decided. "There's no point in growing too much and losing the essence of what we do." This wisdom of keeping her feet on the ground, even in the face of success, was one more valuable lesson that the difficulties of the past had taught. Sarah knew that uncontrolled growth could destroy everything they had built. Among the many proposals, some truly interesting ones stood out. A luxury supermarket chain wanted her products, a publishing house was interested in publishing a book about her story, and a foundation offered resources to expand the educational program. "These 3 proposals make sense for us," analyzed Elizabeth. "The supermarket chain expands our market, the book spreads our philosophy, and the educational program is something we really want to develop." Elizabeth's strategic analysis impressed Sarah more and more. The girl had developed a business vision that many experienced entrepreneurs didn't possess. Her future in management would be brilliant. The negotiations with the supermarket chain were complex, but resulted in an excellent contract. They wanted exclusive products with distinctive packaging to serve customers who prioritized superior quality. "It will be a premium line," explained the chain's commercial manager. "Your products will have a prime space in the stores and targeted marketing for our best customers." The partnership with the publisher also evolved quickly. A ghostwriter would come spend a week at the farm to learn the whole story and help Sarah structure the book. The working title was From Inheritance to Empire, How We Transformed an Abandoned Farm into a Thriving Business. The educational program received funding from the foundation to structure regular school visits. Abigail was overjoyed when she learned she would be officially recognized as the project's junior environmental educator. "I'll get a certificate and everything," she celebrated. "And you'll receive a symbolic salary too," added Sarah. "Good work should be recognized and paid." The professionalization of Abigail's activities was an important milestone. At 12 years old, she officially became a paid collaborator in the family business. It was the recognition of the value of her specialized work. Elizabeth also officially assumed the position of administrative director, with a salary matching her responsibilities. Sarah made sure to formalize her daughter's participation in the business, ensuring they had proper rights and recognition. "You are de facto partners, so you should be legal partners too," she explained, signing the partnership documents. The formalization of the family partnership was emotional for everyone. It was the official recognition that this business had truly been built in partnership, with each one contributing their specific talents. The ghostwriter arrived the following week and was impressed with the farm's organization and the girls' maturity. He had expected to find an interesting story, but discovered an extraordinary narrative of overcoming and success. "I rarely see such a radical transformation in so little time," he commented, "and even rarer is to see a family working in such perfect harmony." During the 5 days he spent on the property, the writer followed all of the family's activities. He participated in egg collection, guided tours, administrative meetings, and client negotiations. He wanted to capture every aspect of the business. "Your story has all the elements of a bestseller," he said to Sarah. "Drama, overcoming challenges, family teamwork, well-deserved success. It's both inspiring and educational." The book would be launched simultaneously in print and digital versions, with a marketing campaign that would include Sarah's lectures in various cities. The publisher was very confident in the work's commercial potential. Meanwhile, the farm's production continued to grow sustainably. With the new contracts, they reached the mark of 15,000 eggs per week, in addition to significantly increasing the production of vegetables, honey, and other products. The staff grew to 20 people, all hired from the region. Willow Creek Farm became one of the largest local employers, contributing significantly to the community's economy. "Our company generates income for many people," observed Elizabeth, reviewing the payroll. "Besides the direct employees, we have suppliers, service providers, transporters." The positive social impact was a source of pride for the family. They had managed to build a business that benefited not only themselves, but the entire surrounding community. George, the neighbor who had helped at the beginning, was hired as a technical consultant for the company. At 70 years old, he found a new occupation that valued his accumulated experience and knowledge. "Mrs. Sarah, when I saw you arriving here with the girls, I imagined it would work out," he said, "but I never thought it would be so grand." "Without your help in the beginning, we wouldn't have made it," replied Sarah. "You are part of this story." Recognizing the pioneers was important to Sarah. She never forgot the people who had helped in difficult times and made a point of including them in the current success. Michael, the first employee hired, was promoted to production manager. He coordinated all the farm's operational activities, allowing Sarah to focus on strategy and developing new projects. "Michael is my right hand," Sarah would say. "He understands our work philosophy and maintains quality standards even when I'm not present." Delegating responsibilities was crucial to allowing Sarah to participate in events, travel to meet other producers, and dedicate herself to strategic planning. The company had matured enough to function well without her constant presence. Elizabeth turned 15 and was already receiving offers for paid internships from large companies familiar with her work. But she preferred to continue learning within the family business before seeking other experiences. "I still have a lot to learn here," she said, "and I want to help the company grow even more before thinking about other opportunities." Abigail, at 13, was considered one of the top regional specialists in organic poultry farming. Older technicians sought her advice, and she already participated in scientific events presenting the techniques she had developed. "It's amazing how such a young girl can teach so much to experienced professionals," commented a veterinarian during one of Abigail's lectures. Abigail's technical recognition opened consulting opportunities with other producers. She began advising farms in the region that wanted to implement organic farming methods, always accompanied by Sarah or George. The diversification of activities continued to grow. Besides production, education, and consulting, they developed a line of natural cosmetics using ingredients from the farm itself. Honey, eggs, and plant extracts were transformed into handmade soaps, creams, and shampoos. The idea came when I saw we were throwing away many ingredients that could be repurposed, explained Elizabeth, who had coordinated the development of the new line. The natural cosmetics found a receptive market among consumers, looking for products without harsh chemicals. Production started small, but soon had to be expanded due to demand. A compounding pharmacy from the big city became interested in distributing the natural cosmetics from Willow Creek Farm. It was another sales channel that would add value to the byproducts of the main activity. We are seizing every opportunity to create value from what we already produce, analyzed Sarah. It's circular economy in practice. Sustainability has always been a core value of the business, but now it was taking on more sophisticated dimensions. The farm was approaching the ideal of a productive system that generates no waste. The book launch was a landmark event. The publisher organized a book signing at the main bookstore in the big city, and Sarah was accompanied by her daughters. The line of people interested in learning the story surprised everyone. "Your story inspires us greatly," said a reader. "It shows that it's possible to start over and succeed even in the most difficult circumstances." "The secret is to never give up and to work with love," replied Sarah. "And having a close-knit family helps a lot." The book quickly entered the bestseller lists, especially in the business and entrepreneurship category. Sarah's lectures filled auditoriums in various cities, always with a very receptive and interested audience. During a lecture in São Paulo, a businesswoman approached Sarah. "I have a proposal to make," she said. "How about franchising your business model? Many people would like to replicate your experience." Franchising. It was a possibility Sarah had never considered. It would allow multiplying the positive social impact of her work, helping other families develop similar businesses. "It's an interesting idea," she replied, "but it would need to be very well structured to maintain the quality standards and philosophy." The franchise proposal sparked a lot of interest in the family. Elizabeth was excited about the growth possibilities, while Abigail was concerned about maintaining the personalized care for the animals in other units. "If we do franchises, we have to teach properly how to take good care of the animals," said Abigail. "It can't just be about the money." Abigail's concern reflected the family's values. Financial success was important, but it could never compromise animal welfare or product quality. After many discussions and analyses, they decided to develop a pilot franchise project. It would first be tested with one unit in the region, closely supervised, before any larger expansion. "We'll do it slowly and do it right," decided Sarah, "as we've always done everything in our company." The pilot franchisees were a young couple from the region who had lost their jobs in the city and wanted to return to the countryside. They received intensive 3-month training at Willow Creek Farm before starting their own activities. "Will you teach everything you know?" asked the wife of the couple. "Everything," assured Abigail, "including how to talk to the chickens to keep them happy." The franchise program included not only technical training, but also ongoing support, supply of selected breeding stock, and access to already established marketing channels. The pilot unit was inaugurated 6 months later, with a small ceremony attended by the Miller family. It was emotional to see their business model being replicated by other people. "It's as if our family has grown," commented Elizabeth, watching the new producers working. "And our animals too," added Abigail, seeing the chickens at the new unit. The success of the pilot franchise encouraged the development of the program. Within 2 years, there were already 5 units operating in the region, all maintaining the quality standards and values of the original company. "We are creating a network of family-run organic producers," said Sarah during a meeting with all the franchisees. "Together, we are stronger and can serve larger markets." The Willow Creek Farm franchise network became a national reference in family-run organic agribusiness. The model combined economic viability with social and environmental responsibility, attracting conscious investors and entrepreneurs. Elizabeth, now 17, was accepted into one of the country's best universities to study business administration with a specialization in agribusiness. but she would continue living on the farm and actively participating in the company. "I want to learn new things at the university to apply here," she explained. "Our company can grow much more." Abigail, 15, had already decided she would study veterinary medicine specializing in organic production animals. She wanted to develop even more advanced techniques for sustainable management. "I will study hard to help not just our little animals, but the little animals of all organic producers," she said. The girl's future plans always included the continuity and growth of the family business. They had grown up alongside the business and felt truly fulfilled contributing to its development. Sarah, at 45, had become one of the most respected rural businesswomen in the country. She participated in government advisory boards, lectured at universities, and advised international organizations on sustainable agriculture projects. "I never imagined I would come this far," she confessed during an interview. "When I took over that abandoned farm, I just wanted a decent place to raise my daughters." "And you achieved much more than that," observed the journalist. "You built an empire and educated 2 future leaders." Professional recognition was gratifying, but Sarah knew her greatest achievement was in the daughters she had raised. Elizabeth and Abigail were responsible, competent young women committed to solid values. Willow Creek Farm celebrated 10 years of operation with a big party that brought together employees, customers, franchisees, suppliers, and the entire local community. It was a celebration not just of commercial success, but of the positive social impact built over the decade. 10 years ago, we arrived here with 2 suitcases of clothes and a lot of determination, said Sarah in the opening speech of the party. Today, we have a solid company, but more importantly, we have a united family and a prosperous community. The numbers were impressive. The company produced 50,000 eggs per week, directly employed 80 people, and indirectly benefited over 200 families through the franchise and supplier network. But the numbers didn't tell the whole story. The true legacy was in the transformation of the people involved. Employees who had moved from subsistence to the middle class, young people who found opportunities without needing to migrate to the big cities, families who discovered the viability of sustainable agriculture. "You have changed our region," said the town's mayor during the party. "You brought prosperity and hope to many people." Official recognition came in the form of honorary titles and awards. Sarah was honored as Businesswoman of the Year, Elizabeth received a Young Entrepreneur Award, and Abigail was recognized as a young innovator in sustainability. But the most significant awards were the smiles of the people whose lives had been positively impacted by the family's work. Employees who bought their own homes, young people who found promising careers, consumers who gained access to healthier food. "The greatest reward is seeing that our work made a difference in people's lives," said Abigail during her thank you speech. The party lasted until late, with music, dancing, and plenty of food produced right on the farm. It was a genuine celebration of a community that had prospered together. At the end of the night, when the last guests had left, the family gathered on the house's porch as they had every night for 10 years. But now they had so much more to celebrate and be thankful for. "Do you think Uncle Arthur imagined his abandoned farm would become all this?" asked Sarah, looking at the illuminated barns and modern facilities. "I think he knew we were special," replied Elizabeth, "and he left the farm to us because he believed in our potential." "He's proud of us up in heaven," added Abigail. "And his little animals are happy too, seeing how well we take care of the new little animals." The mention of Uncle Arthur always brought gratitude and a sense of responsibility. That seemingly unwanted inheritance had become the foundation of a prosperous and meaningful life. They felt like guardians of a legacy that needed to be preserved and expanded. The plans for the future were ambitious but realistic. Elizabeth wanted to expand the franchise network to other states, always maintaining quality standards. Abigail dreamed of developing an organic poultry research center attached to the farm. Sarah supported her daughter's dreams, but always reminded them of the importance of growing sustainably and with purpose. Financial success was a consequence, never the main goal. "What do you want people to remember about our story 50 years from now?" she asked. "That we proved it's possible to succeed without harming anyone," replied Elizabeth. And that we always took good care of the animals and nature, Abigail finished. That's how they wanted to be remembered, as a family that turned difficulties into opportunities, that built prosperity without forgetting human values, that proved it's possible to reconcile economic success with social and environmental responsibility. The night ended with the same rituals as always, checking on the animals, organizing the next day's production, planning the week's activities. The routine that had once been about survival was now pure fulfillment. As she lay down, Sarah looked out the window and saw the property softly lit by the security lights. In every building, in every tree, in every meter of that land there was history, work, dreams fulfilled. 10 years earlier, she had inherited an old, abandoned farm. Now she would leave her daughters a solid estate, but more important than that, she would leave the example that determination, honest work, and family unity can overcome any adversity. Willow Creek Farm was not just a prosperous business, it was living proof that true inheritances are not measured in money, but in opportunities for growth, values passed down, and legacies built with love and dedication. And so, the woman who once cried before a property in ruins fell asleep peacefully, knowing she had transformed that seemingly unwanted inheritance into the greatest gift she could leave her daughters, the certainty that it is always possible to start over and build something valuable, no matter how difficult the initial circumstances. End of story. This was a fictional story created to touch our hearts. Now tell us what you thought. Tell us what moved you most in this story of overcoming. Do you believe Sarah made the right choices? Leave your opinion in the comments with sincere words, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories.